All right, welcome back. Another video. So we'll try to keep these going for you. Um, Slope intercept form, again, just quick review. That is y equals mx plus b. And on this video, we're going to just focus on the slope. So recap, you guys know the rise and run. So that's just our change in vertical over our change in horizontal. You can tell like that is a positive slope right there. Our next one that you guys have learned is our two ordered pairs, and we just use this equation right here where m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And you can see I actually went through the steps. I just would have to put in the template and solve. And then our other version is our table. When you're given a table, and what you want to do is just find the difference in your x and y's, and I'm going to explain a little more as we go. So that's our change in y and change in x. And what we'll do is we end up developing ratios depending on how much, and we want to make sure that those all match to determine if it's a linear slope or nonlinear. A linear equation or a nonlinear equation, and that would determine if it's what would be a line if they're all equal ratios. So here's our first little example. Now before we go ahead and do that, here's just kind of our steps that we're going to follow, and I'll refer back to this as we go. So step one, we're going to find the difference in our x's and y's, and we want to make sure we identify if it's positive or negative, because that will help us determine if our slope is positive or negative. So here's our x and y, and here's just a simple table, and you can tell on our x's is pretty simple. It's just a difference of 1, so I put plus 1 and plus 1, and we use these little arrows just to make sure we just know that we did it, and it's good to keep it just plus 1, and that makes sense. So we can see all those are just plus 1, and we can see on the other side that they're all just going by 5s. Plus 5, plus 5, plus 5, plus 5, so I'll just put plus 5, and plus 5. So there we are. Oh, this one's pretty easy. Both sides are all 5 and the other sides are all 1. So we just use our slope, and that's just our change in y over our change in x. And this one's pretty obvious. We can see that all of them are just 5 over 1. So m is just 5 over 1, and all of them, I don't have to write them all out because we can see that, and then that can just be simplified to 5. Now, if you put 5 over 1, I will never mark it wrong. If it's asking you to make sure it's in its simplest form, then you make sure you put 5. So if you are using IXL and even Schoology might not give me that flexibility, then you would need to put it in its simplest forms, and that will usually be stated within the question. Okay, so right there, whoops, I kind of skipped ahead and I went. So you can see step 2, place the difference in ratios. In a ratio, the differences into a ratio, and then 3, you want to make sure they're all equivalent, and if they are all equivalent, it's linear, and you did find slope, and we did that right there. Okay, so those are our steps. Now if I show this and you want to write it down or have it in your notes somewhere, you can just hit pause and just make sure you write that and turn it back on, so I don't want to waste a bunch of time and have you just look at it right there. So let's look at another example. So remember step 1, find the differences, and at times they won't be as obvious. So right here, I can see from 0 to 3, it's positive 3, 3 to 6. So I can see these are all counted by 3s. So this is easy when your test maker does this. These are easier ones, okay? Now the key over here is just look. So 5 to 7, oh, plus 2, plus 2, plus 2, and now we have found the differences in our two x and y's. So remember, our slope is change in y over change in x, and again we're going to this, and we can see that all the ratios are, my change in y's are all 2, my change in x is 3, so this is linear. It's not proportional because we have our y-intercept is even given here, but this is a linear function that's presented to us because all of our ratios are the same. Now, if I want to check this, I could see that if this is plus 3, we would just keep the pattern going, and this here would just be 13. And I could easily write an equation, and we'll get into that as we get going on a little bit more later on, okay? So that's a pretty easy example. Now our next one here, this one's a little more tricky. So again, we go through our step 1 right over here, which is find the difference in our x and y's. So I can see here, this is from 2 to 4, that's adding 2. And then from 4 to 7 is adding 3. And then I'm adding 7 to 10. Oh, that's 3. Okay, well, at least we got 2 of them that are identical, so that's pretty good to see if those ratios work out. Now we got to do some math. Now I'm going to start getting into some calculators in class, but 7 to 13, you can just see that would be 13 minus 7. And if you don't see it, that's just increasing by 6. And then from 13 to 22, if you're good with math, you can see that that's increasing 9. And then from 22 to 31 is also increasing to 9. So then we have all our differences. So you are going to go again against the change in y over change in x, and we write all our ratios. So my first ratio here is 6 over 2. My ratio over here is 9 over 3. And my ratio down here is 9 over 3. Two of them are the same. But let's always try to put these in simplified terms. Now, large number on top, small number on the bottom, that is a mixed, that's an improper fraction. It could possibly be a mixed number, but I can tell right now that 2 divides into 6 3 times. So this is 6 divided by 2, which is just equal to 3. Okay, that's easy. So I can see 3, there's 3 3s and 9, so 9 divided by 3 is 3. And obviously if I figured that one out, this one should be easy. And I can see all my slopes here are 3. So this is a linear function because all the ratios are equivalent. Now I don't have our slope-intercept form, and I'm going to go over that later on and how you can do those later on, but that's how we do those. Should be fairly simple. Again, this is the part where some of you guys might struggle, is finding out the difference, and that's where a lot of these on tests that get into crazier numbers like this will allow a calculator. Some of those other simpler ones will not, but these will. Now we got this one here. Ooh, boy, what's going on this one? So here, hopefully you guys know how to count by 2s, so you can see that these are all 2s. Plus 2, plus 2, plus 2, and then plus 2. Yeah. Ooh, now these ones are a little stranger. So when the number is bigger and it's getting smaller, we're subtracting, and I can see that's minus 4. So if I have a minus and a positive, that's probably telling me that I'm going to have a negative slope. And that can go to where, if you ever want to check, and I can see that's a minus 4, I can see that's a minus 4, and I can see that as a minus 4. And if you ever want to do that, that's where that sketching thing I told you. So here I'm just going to do this, and I know it's kind of tough. And I can see 415 is right here, 4, and then 15's up here, and 6 and 11. So 6 would be a little bit further right and a little bit less. And if I connect those two dots, we can see right there that that is going to be a negative slope. And we could even see approximately where our y-intercept will be when we get into that a little bit more. So we'd know that this right here is 415. So when I get to my y-intercept, it's going to be 0, and it's going to have to be more than 15. And we will get into that a little bit more, but that's where that sketch can kind of help you with problems later on. So now we just put our ratio, and since they're all the same, my change in y is negative 4, and that's a 2, and then negative 4 divided by 2 is just negative 2, and that is your slope. So m equals negative 2. And that's it. That's how simple those are. So right now, with these tables, I just want you to focus on finding the slope. We'll get into it a little bit more on how to figure out and write an equation and how to get slope-intercept form, but this video is just to show you how to get slope. If you have any questions, always find me during lunch, before, after school, or recess. Have a good day. See ya tomorrow.